I am NetMoverSitan. It would appear that Yuria has made the lives of Moses and Ezra more complicated. But for now, Moses and Yuria have something more immediate to deal with. We continue this story with Chapter 18, A Carp and Mermaids. Within the red water of the Distortion of Fei, the daughter of Zhang Li, the operator of Dou Jin Combat Office, Moses found mermaids. But they looked like koi carp with human faces and long hair. One of the fish was singing again, like they couldn't take the hints. Another thought it lame how they wrote cringy lyrics to sing with that voice. But she'd be a better singer if they were born that size. The three koi mermaids were sitting around, loudly chatting with each other with empty eye sockets, like Zhang Li's. Well, as far as Moses and her distortion vision was concerned, possibly hinting at a similarity with them. They lacked sight, likely navigating through echolocation, where voice was a consistent element rather, with the merfolk. Yes, there's different variations of this kind of distortion. And their voices became red fawns that shoot at others. They could hear a sound in the distance. Moses asked if they could join in their conversation, as someone was singing out there. The koi carp merfolk weren't happy with being interrupted by these strangers. Yuria told them that they were talking and laughing so loud they couldn't not hear them. The merfolk told them to mind their own business, complaining that they can't talk in peace. Moses apologized as their hearing could not pick up the sound travelling in the water. Yuria wanted to know what was going on in that place, and one of the koi carp mermaids asked if they're from above. Moses told them that they came from outside. The koi merfolk told them of the rules there. Well, one of them was to pluck their eyes out, as sight was the most dangerous thing you can have there. Honestly, what is this place? The Event Horizon? As in, Libera tutime exiferis? Yuria thought it to be beautiful around there. Yeah, it's because it was dazzling and beautiful. It was why it was lethal. As for how many of the koi merfolk there were, there's around 100 there. Well, those that survived the huge monster. Nothing was free in that world. As for what they want them to wield, the koi merfolk wanted them to wield their voice. They'll only take small portions from them. They'll still be able to speak. This was freaking Yuria out. Moses agreed to what they wanted with their voices, including Yuria, much to her surprise. But she told Yuria to trust her, which she reluctantly agreed to. The three mermaids kissed them, which extracted part of their voices. Apparently Moses tasted good, expecting it to be savoury with her more advanced years. This resulted in Moses having a 50% volume compared to normal, and she sounded raspy, but she was alright. One of them warned them not to speak too much there, as not all take voices gently like they did. It was a finite resource, but it was pointless if they didn't talk. It was why they talked non-stop and looked for more voices. Then Moses asked about where the giant fish was, and also about it. Apparently, it was where the screams were coming from, and also coming from a headache-inducing, brightly shining place. The giant fish had a never-ending, massive voice pocket, regardless of how much she sung. Moses thanked them and, well, left them alone. She and Uriah followed the screams. Moses theorized that the giant fish might be Fae, which was attacking her with her voice. She asked Uriah if her teddy bears attacked her, much as the coy merfolk were attacking this fish, and Faye was attacking the outside. Uriah told her that they could if she ordered them to do so. Moses theorized that this distortion was a possible form of self-harm. She then pieced it together. Faye, a 17-year-old student of a virtual school. The red freshwater aquarium filled with singing mermaids that make fawns from their voices and has self-harm themes. Possibilities include discord with someone in the virtual school, the trials of puberty, insecurity with a possibly tone-deaf voice or feeling insecure about their singing, self-loathing, losing relationships. Yeah, quite a few with her, isn't there? Let's find out more, shall we? Moses theorized that the pool of red water could be blood bled from a wounded heart. Stagnant water meaning melancholy. The gloom distorted in this way. Seawater with a deep blue hue would mean sorrow. Blood red water is disruptive, full of depression with subtle destructive impulses and repeating thoughts. She followed the source, while deflecting the thorns with her sword construct. They then found a giant carp with a pink glow, the host of the distortion. A radiant light akin to a gemstone was generated by this, with red thorns lodged in its body. Its screams of pain were as clear as its bleeding. Yet she sings crying. Yes, she sings while she's crying, rather. The mermaids were lured into the light, and long arms drew them in, and gouged their eyes out, and they sank to the bottom, painfully. Then a red thorn grazed Moses' cheek. Yeah, a bit of friendly fire there. This thorn nailed itself in the carp. Unfortunately, it also pops the white veil. Yeah, like the white damage shield of K-Corp. It didn't protect against everything, just enough to withstand mental damage until the protection is depleted, which unfortunately for Moses, the protection was broken. which meant she was exposed to all the misery around her, and she tried to block the light. Moses told Yuria to hand the purple ribbon, as that was the feeling of enveloping something, which made the violet breath form smoke that surrounded the carp and restrained the light it emitted. Moses then removed the thorns that were stuck in the giant koi carp's body, which made it shriek with each one removed. Apparently, they invoked visions of Faye's past, where she just wanted to sing, where she was always alone at home, that she became friends with fellow students who enjoyed her songs. She was happy that her friends listened to the songs she wrote. But that changed, and apparently they only liked her pretty voice, not the songs she made. She believed that they were jealous of her, and thought she was hated. So she started hating them. She pushed them away, one-sidedly. Well, I guess Sylvester Stallone was right, wouldn't you say? Vindictive people, those that go out of their way to hurt others, will end up broken alone. Moses certainly saw that. She told Faye that the mermaids were illusions created by self-hatred and anger. She created a place to feel hurt and vent those feelings. Considering that the malice was an illusion, she needed to talk with her friends. Doubt and anger that were presumptions made by her were harming her. Moses said all this as she kept removing thorns. Her ears were bleeding. She was barely staying conscious. Faye experienced self-perceived rejection from others and created a space for herself to be consumed by that negativity. Then the last thorn was extracted, and she told Faye that she'd face many hardships similar to that in the future, that she shouldn't hurt herself because of that. She needed to make sure of the true feelings of others and herself, even if it's uncomfortable and painful. If she needed to, she could contact Moses when she's troubled by that. Then the red water poured out of Faye's room, and they were swept along and landed in the living room. Then Zhang Dei hugged her. The case was solved, and Faye was mostly back to normal, save for a few scales on her face. He was grateful to Moses, and then Moses told him that he should pay more attention to Faye. He's been neglecting her too much, and yes, his job keeps him busy, but she didn't see that as any excuse, and he intended to. Then there was a knocking of the door at 2 a.m. Not a good sign. So Zhang Dei got his padaio, which is an edged infantry weapon that's a spear with a long blade of Chinese origin, from his dimensional glove. Oh, so he shopped in the same place as the one that ended up married with the... ended up married to the Black Silence. Well, he told Moses to stay there regardless. She carried Faye on her back to her restored room. Unfortunately, the one at the door was impatient and knocked the door out of the frame, throwing it into the house. Moses recognized the voice asking for her. It was Vesper Crabro. Zhang Dei sounded intimidating when asked why he was there. Vesper told him who he was, that he was an associate fixer of Encore, a taboo hunter, and that he had business in his home. Zhang Lei guessed someone broke the taboo. Yeah, of recording video footage, and Vesper confirmed this. Zhang Li said that he could at least take his shoes off, at least. He then proceeded to search for her, not paying attention to the one whose home he was breaking into. When Vesper got to Faye's room, where the floor was soaked with red liquid, Zhang Li knew that they were rumbled, and he told Moses to run. He blocked Vesper's sword with his Budayo. Apparently Vesper had heard of him. There had been a report on him in the past. Zhang Li was humoured by this and told Moses to take good care of Faye. She agreed to. Vesper scowled at Moses as the two combatants clashed weapons with each other, which destroyed the furniture, and shouting was heard, but Moses decided not to linger and carry Faye on her back, taking the stairs as she couldn't afford to wait for the elevator. As they both reached the ground floor, it was then something dropped from above, which caved in the floor nearby. She laid Faye on the ground, and the dark shape was revealed in the streetlight to be Vesper, who was smeared with blood. It was clear from the severed head of Zhang Lei that he threw at them that he killed her protector. She placed her pipe in her mouth and let out her pale blue breath, although Vesper was too quick for her, as before she let out her attack, her right arm was sliced off, along with the pipe. Vesper was cleaning the blood of his yellow blade, or rather off it. Apparently he's collected the testimony of 50 people, which was justification enough to execute her in District 14. He sheathed his yellow hwando, which is basically a Korean single-edged, one-handed short sword that's curved slightly. Yeah, I know, I got it wrong, sorry. He asked if she had any last words. Yeah, not looking good for her, is it? In fact, it's not looking good for Ezra either. As for Yuria, she appears to be safe for the time being, considering that her mind in the teddy bear was still there. If she was dead, it would have been made obvious. As for what happens next, that's in Chapter 19, The Hunter. Moses, after being disarmed, in more than one way, was at the mercy of Vesper Crabrow, the taboo hunter, a fixer under the direct employ of Encore. Well, she had to think carefully about what she had to say, even with the pain from where her severed right arm used to be. She asked him if he wanted to take her life, as she's more interested in hearing what he has to say. Interesting priority. you're bleeding from a severed limb, you could be killed by a taboo hunter, likely being seen as an accessory for the crime of whoever did record the footage. Well, Vesper says that he doesn't enjoy this, as he prefers to keep violence to a minimum. As for what he wants, it's to retrieve the original footage that was recorded, then moving Moses, Ezra, and Uriah to Encore. Uriah for the original violation, Moses and Ezra for unknowingly recording footage with the night vision goggles they commissioned her to make. Also, those that are sent to Encore for for infringing that taboo, they don't come out. Not alive, anyway. At least as far as Vesper is concerned. Which implies that those that break the... Well, those that break the taboo are either sentenced to life without parole, experimented on, or tortured, if they aren't outright kills. Well, at least those that are killed by the taboo hunters get it over with. As for why Vesper isn't cutting her head off and storing it in a U-Corp preservation cube, even though he could, as Moses noted. Well, before we get to that, she considered the situation. Vesper needed something that only she had. It wasn't knowledge about the distortion. It's to bring her, Ezra, and Uriah to Encore. She suspected that Ezra might have been found already and might have been taken care of. Uriah's body was out cold, and he was unaware that her mind was in a small teddy bear on her person. Although not killed, as Uriah in her teddy bear was still there. She also knew that Vesper was one with not a lot of time, considering that he was checking his watch. It allowed her to try something, as Uriah knew where the recordings were, and if he had a lot of time and knew where the others were, he wouldn't have hesitated to cut their heads off and search their brains. Well, now, was that N-Corp singularity, the ability to hack into and access the contents of brains, even though they're severed from the rest of the body? As for the visual records of their actions, as in what the taboo was all about, Moses knew where they were, the workshop of Uriah. Moses could use that to advantage. Time and information were her weapons. And then Moses pointed out to Vesper that she's the only conscious person with a lead on the whereabouts of the original footage, and he's short of time. Vesper was fully aware of that. Moses understood enough about his situation. As like any winged drone, patience was short, regardless of what wing you're a part of. Moses then asked what happened to Ezra. Vesper described her as quick-witted and one that eluded him. Oh, so she wasn't dead. At least not yet. But he could be lying. For all Moses knew. Vesper then asked her where the original copy of the footage she recorded was located. Well, Moses knew that it was in Yuri's atelier, but she didn't know how to access it. As for where Yuri's body was located, that was in Vesper's car, and completely untouched. Well, he's not lying about that, considering that Yuri's teddy bear psychomant was still there. Vesper wanted to know if she can figure out how to access the location where the footage was located. Moses thought about this. She could ask Uriah about that, and besides, if Moses said no to this, then she'd likely have her head sliced off by Vesper, as that would mean she outlives her usefulness. She understood that he was more honest than he seemed, and he expected an honest answer. Yeah, she had no reason not to believe him. She then told him that she had a way of accessing it, and then asked what would happen to them once they followed him to Encore. That he doesn't know. He just hunts down those that violate the taboo and sends them to Encore. Yeah, clearly that information is on a need-to-know only basis. Vesper checked the watch. Yeah, he's definitely short on time, so he made a deal with her. If the original footage is found, only Moses will be taken. Ezra and Uriah would be left alone. Moses agreed with this deal, and then she told Uriah to open the atelier for Vesper. And seeing a living teddy bear apparently resulted in no reaction to Vesper didn't see this as out of the ordinary. Clearly he's seen either similar or even more confusing than this. Uriah told them that a door was needed to get to her atelier, using the one in Zhang using one in the house of the one that Vesper killed was the most convenient. Vesper agreed for them to go back there. He'll keep the arm and her smoking pipe in the Eucor preservation cube. Vesper she dressed her shoulder, and he put Faye on his shoulder, who was still unconscious. Moses and Uriah watched Vesper's bizarre series of movements in silence. He decided that the elevator was too slow, so he picked them up and leaped up to the 17th floor. This was made possible due to a number of augmentations combined with some physical training. They came back to the house and saw the aftermath of the previous battle. Vesper saw it as self-defense, and hoped that she didn't have any hard feelings towards him killing Zhang Li. This told Moses that he was dangerous, that he could switch attitude in an instant, that he counted on others lowering their guard with honeyed words. He said that he didn't do it because he wanted to, as he could have taken Zhang Li down non-lethally. Yeah, he knows how to psychologically manipulate others. Yeah, sounds like a psychopath, doesn't it? And there's one unwritten rule with them. Never trust them, as every action they take is calculated. Faye was put on the floor, for now at least. Well, she didn't break the taboo, so why threaten her? Moses told Yuria to open the workshop. She touched one of the closed doors, which made it vibrate briefly. Vesper was not fazed by this, although it was unfamiliar, and he wanted Moses to enter first. She picked up Yuria and placed her on her shoulder, opened the door to the familiar staircase of Yuria's atelier and walked down, with Vesper following them, keeping distance. So that's what she meant by saying that she can reverse it at any time, as the workshop is, well, wherever she wants it to be, as long as there's a doorway to use. When they reached the hall, that was when Moses made her move, whispering an order to Yuria to send the bears to attack Vesper. Moses rolled out of the way, and that was when a teddy bear rush occurred. And we've seen what they can do. They could slice a human in half with the blades on their paws. But a flash of yellow light resulted in the heads of the bears rolling before they could reach him. While he was distracted with, well, one bear wielding an axe, along with others, Moses ran towards the exit. She asked if Yuria could pump out an unlimited amount of bears. She can't. Her brain was straining from this, struggling to speak. Yeah, the psychoment, EGO, or whatever you want to call it, comes from a finite resource. If the mind is strained too much, this resource eventually runs out, unless it rests in order to recharge. Vesper was disappointed by this. Then Moses told Vesper that he'd have to settle for finding the footage at the end of the corridor. A legion of teddy bears were likely to prevent him from coming for them immediately. But Vesper intends to take her and the footage. He fired a harpoon from his clothes. Well, those hornets embroidered on his clothes aren't just for appearance. They had built-in weapons, specifically one designed to incapacitate humans. Moses was unable to get up after being hit by one of these. And Yuria was unable to help her. And when Vesper was right behind her, he decided that taking her head was a better idea. Then Ezra delivered hectopascal kick with 10 times acceleration, which was enough to send him flying, although Ezra was injured herself. She was in better condition than Moses. Yuria and Ezra were happy to see each other. Ezra was unable to protect Yuria's body from Vesper, and they still have to worry about Vesper, as most would be reduced to pieces of flesh and bone with that flying kick. Moses asked Ezra to remove the harpoon stuck in her thigh. Ezra did so, even though it was painful to Moses. Ezra agreed to hold Vesper off, and Yuria used the teddy bears that are still remaining to get Moses away. Yeah, they were manifested from what little mental strength remained, which wasn't much by that point. Vesper charged at them up the staircase, but Ezra caught his yellow blades between her palms, making her unable to follow them right away. Vesper was amused by this. Ezra told Detective to go first. Moses understood and told her to get up as soon as she had the chance. Unfortunately, due to the determination of Vesper to carry out his mission, Ezra was unable to immediately comply. This was the situation that they were trying to avoid. It's why Moses hired Dou Jin Combat Office to begin with. This continued in Chapter 20, A Bloody Struggle. Ezra thought that she might win if things went well. Unfortunately, the edge of Vesper's left-hand sword was heading towards Ezra, and she was trying to avoid that. Unfortunately, his unoccupied right hand hit her in the ribs and sent her flying into the wall. Then she kicked him on the rebound, which knocked his glasses off his face, although he was quick to regain balance. Ezra wiped the blood off her mouth. Vesper saw her as talented in combat, but she didn't have the talent for killing people. Saying this as he slashed Ezra's chest before she could hit him with her Nestor Workshop hammer, which only hit air. Moses realized how much she relied on her pipe in combat. She couldn't help Ezra in this battle. Then Yuria reminded Shanbei that, well, about what they talked about the other day. Ezra knew what she meant, as Vesper was slicing her on the waist with his yellow blade. This revealed augmented armor. Vesper asked why she didn't use it earlier. The reason for that was, it was her first time. Vesper tried to hit her left arm, which was also protected by her armor. The yellow blade was able to cut into it, but it wasn't deep, based on the yellow trails that it left behind when it struck her. It turned out that Ezra had developed her own psychoments, which allowed her to shrug off Vesper's attack. She punched Vesper hard enough to make him flinch and cough up blood on the floor. She continued pummeling him, pushing him into the corner. Ezra was in control of the battle, leaving no opening for him to fight back. Knowing how to fight one with a bladed weapon, but Vesper wouldn't yield. Even when he had a face covered in blood, he would not lose his balance. But although Ezra dominated the fight, she couldn't relax. Vesper knew that he needed to reassess Ezra as, well, she was clearly holding back previously. Ezra didn't pay much attention to this as she struck him repeatedly in multiple areas, every known weakness of the human body that would normally be fatal. But thanks to whatever augmentations he had done on him, he didn't collapse. Yuria and Moses escaped the atelier, and she watched Ezra's fight, observing Vesper picking his harpoon up, the one that was in Moses not long ago. There was a hole in Ezra's armor that exposed a part of her left shoulder. But Ezra didn't step back. As she pummeled Vesper with her right hand, she was stabbed in the side by the harpoon. This didn't stop her. She wrapped her right arm around Vesper's and broke it. Vesper's eyes went lifeless. No, they weren't lifeless at all. He stared at Ezra, and she knew that she'd die if she continued this fight. Moses shouted at Ezra to get up there. Ezra kicked Vesper in the chest and complied with this order. She sprinted up the stairs, and Moses then told Yuria to seal the workshop. Vesper readied his harpoon, either reloading his hidden weapon or having another ready for, well, this kind of situation. Ezra was only one step away from the door. Then the yellow lights flashed before her eyes. The harpoon was heading towards Ezra and her. Moses believed in Ezra as she slammed the door shut with all her strength. All three were alive. Barely. Thankfully, the harpoon was heading into the door and was unable to break through it. And that's considering that Ezra was badly injured herself. Even so, she had more concern about checking the detective's arm and leg. Well, the remaining arm and leg, considering that, well, Vesper cut off one of her arms. But they had more immediate problems to consider. As in the living room, the fixers of Dou Jin Combat Office that was still alive were there, and around them, or rather, the one in the middle of them was Faye. Yeah, clearly Moses had much to explain to her. Well, for a start, what happened to her father? Let's hope that she's forgiving. There are clearly some issues that Moses will need to resolve. Hopefully it won't be as violent as the one she had with Vesper Crabro. Until next time. Hail the rabbit!